What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Johnson. This is my husband and co-host, Brett Johnson. Brett, how are you? How's your week?
It's good. It's good. We are 2 days into phase one.
2 days into the fall challenge.
Getting in a rhythm. How about you?
Yeah, I was telling someone today when I was doing assessments. I've mentioned this numerous times, but I never feel as in control and just as good mentally as I do when I am actively on my game with nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And like the physical side effects of it are just, that's a literal side effect.
Mm-hmm.
The primary goal for me when I'm tracking my food is that I just feel like I can exercise so much more discipline in every area of life, because that one is just the most difficult for me.
Yeah.
So I feel really good. 2 days in, it sounds kind of crazy, but just recalibrating, and it's like you flip that switch.
Yeah. I just become so task oriented. There's all these different things that I have to get done. So I just become extremely efficient with my time. There's not a whole lot of fluff, which feels good.
Yeah. And then it's funny because when you start a challenge, or if we're doing the Live Hard program right now, like, you become acutely aware of all the time that you waste and all of the areas of opportunity throughout your day when you're not prioritizing it as such. And then you're like, dang, I said for the longest time that I couldn't get this done. Like right now, you're spending 30 minutes a day doing your helicopter ground school, and you've been putting that off for how long? And you're probably going to get it done.
A long time.
You're probably going to get it done this month just by carving out 30 minutes intentionally. But that's what it takes. It's like that time is never going to plop in your lap and appear itself, present itself. You have to carve it out. So you're doing that, and I think that it's just one of those things where you realize the time that you could create, or the time that you use ineffectively.
Right.
Which we're kind of going to talk about a little bit today. We're going to talk about disconnecting, not even for the sake of being more productive, which I think that it's inevitable that when you disconnect or you just unplug a little bit, specifically from social media, for me, my productivity skyrockets. But also just, I think, for enjoyment of life, we have these little screens that are in our pockets, or just an extension of my hand most of the day, and I just feel kind of sick about it sometimes. Like I feel gross. I recognize as I'm looking at the screen and I'm scrolling mindlessly, I'm like, I just feel gross because I want to stop. And sometimes I can identify that it's tough for me to stop. And that makes me feel sick.
Mm-hmm. It makes you feel out of control.
Yeah.
Contrary to what we were just describing, where we're feeling very in control.
Correct.
Right now. Yeah. Yeah. Technology is like, it can be a wonderful thing because it can connect you with so many people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to connect with. But it's a double-edged sword, because the more you're using, your technology to connect with people, the more you're living through a device. And humans were not intended to live through a device. Like these devices that we spend so many hours every day just like staring at, that didn't exist until computers, came into existence in the 70s, is like whenever like a Mac or whatever, the first MacBook was made. But like phones, let's just say, for 20 years essentially, whenever they've really been at the forefront, like cell phones, where they're just in your face a lot.
Yeah, their primary purpose when they were introduced was to supplement your life and to make it easier in ways that we were doing things manually, like typing or things like that. And obviously search engines expedited that. Now you don't have to go through an encyclopedia and wait for a new edition to come out. Like, there are so many benefits to having that. However, I think that it kind of, if you think about it in terms of nutrition, so I had mentioned the word supplementation, like you're supplementing your life with this technology. If you think about it in terms of nutrition, you should be eating all these whole foods, and then the gaps in your diet, to get a nice round diet, you need a supplement. So whether that's vitamins and minerals or protein, whatever, that's like an additional thing to round out the whole picture. And I think that that's what technology and cell phones and technology, just we'll say technology in general, that's what it was intended to do. That's why it was introduced, to supplement our life and to kind of fill those cracks where we could capitalize on. And then just in recent years or the past decade, I feel like it's flip-flopped where our life kind of supplements the technology, and like it's surrounded by there. And then in the cracks of time that you have outside of looking at that screen, you can enjoy life and you can enjoy the people around you. And it kind of makes me sick to think about that, but I feel like that's how it has flip-flopped. Like I spend more time on my phone than I don't.
Yeah, it's a very good way of putting it, because you're spending, whether it be a phone or like a computer, like a laptop or a desktop computer, like you're spending more time. A lot of people do, that have a desk job.
Yeah, I certainly do.
You spend more time in front of a screen than you don't, and that starts to weigh on people, because again, you're having less actual human interaction, which is a very natural thing. Like it feels good. It's good for the soul. It's good just to get away from staring at this box, this object that's. Go ahead.
Do you, when you're disconnected from your phone, because you're making a conscious effort to put your phone away for at least an hour at night, when you do that, and then like you and I are having a conversation, or there's like a lull period, this sounds kind of crazy to ask, like this terminology, do you like miss it? Do you find yourself missing being occupied by the phone?
I don't think there's like a conscious level of missing it. I think there's a subconscious level of always wanting to know if I'm missing out on something, if I have a notification that I've missed. Mm-hmm. And it just becomes like this instinctive reach, where you reach to make sure that you don't have something that you've missed. And that's where I feel like it reels you back in throughout the day. It's not like just at night whenever I try to like very intentionally take time away from it. It's during the day too, which during the day is hard because so much work flows through my phone, just like it does yours. So I'm always looking at it. But even whenever there's nothing there, and even if I didn't see something, I just instinctively want to touch it and like touch the screen and make sure there's nothing on there.
Yeah.
And even if I didn't see anything again, like 2 minutes later, I might just touch it just to make sure. And it's like this unhealthy habit.
Yeah, the best I can just describe it is gross. Like it makes me feel gross, and I can identify that it's happening, and I still reach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of pride myself on being responsive. Like I don't like being the person that's unresponsive or just.
It's hard to reach and.
Yeah. So there's also probably like an unhealthy level to that, because if you constantly want to be so accessible, then it starts to just be this burden where, that's a nice thing, I suppose, to be known for, to be dependable. And I want to be known as dependable. Like it makes me feel good to know that I'm very dependable. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If you need something from me, I'm going to be there to respond. But at the same time, you can get this unhealthy relationship with trying to build a reputation that doesn't really serve you in the long run. Like, does it matter that much if you respond in 5 minutes or 1 minute compared to 20 or 30 minutes? Like, is it really like a time of the essence situation all the time? It's probably not. It probably doesn't make that big of a difference. But yeah, I get wrapped up in that a little bit.
I think that's a really good point. And as you were saying, like you pride yourself on being responsive. That's something that I really hadn't thought about for myself, but that's absolutely something that I also pride myself on. And like, as my social media has grown, and I have really great relationships with so many of my Lexi J Wellness ladies, and I pride myself on having those relationships and maintaining them, that I like, I have that fear of missing a message or fear of missing a DM. And then what will they think if I don't respond? Or what will they think if it takes me a day to respond? And I've gotten a little bit better at it. Like, I used to not let myself put my phone away or go to sleep until I had responded to every single DM. And that was just like, I mean, Brett can vouch for this. I would be standing, because I don't want to bring my phone into the bedroom. I would be standing at our counter, like our kitchen counter, just responding to DMs, or walking on the treadmill, pacing around the house, responding to DMs until I got caught up completely. And it's just like, it's a vicious cycle. And to your point, when you're like, is that pride something that's continuing to serve you? Because, I mean, is me responding into the wee hours of the night or early in the morning, first thing, like responding to a simple DM, when I pride myself on, the discipline I have for the morning and my routine and things like that, like that's kind of showing a lapse in those priorities and those standards that I have there. And it doesn't really serve me. So I think that I need to kind of reevaluate. That's a good point that you made. I need to reevaluate, because I pride myself more on being a person of, good, strong habits and integrity and holding their ground there, rather than being, I don't know, kind of like at the mercy of a silly little DM,
Yeah, because in all reality, the DMs that you receive on Instagram, it's not a situation where somebody's going to say, hey, you need to get to the hospital because your family member's there.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a question. And the hard part where,
and I have good conversations in there, but yeah, it doesn't deserve the urgency that I give it.
Right. Yeah. There's like a happy medium, I suppose, because the really, really hard part is whenever you have a business that, is kind of at the forefront of it all, and you are a direct representation of the business. And that applies very much so to your business, whereas your name is literally on the business. Now, if you have a business where you get to somewhat detach the individual from the business itself, then I think that begins to help a little bit, where the individual is no longer tied as much to the reputation of the business itself. The nature of your business, especially at this point in time, is to tie you to the business. The business doesn't exist without you. And that's where it gets pretty tricky, because you're essentially a slave to the reputation of the business.
I feel like you're reciting my internal dialogue. Yeah.
But that's kind of what you sign on for anytime you start, a company.
Yeah, for sure. And you name it after yourself.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of what you sign on for. And you know that it's going to be hard and there's going to be a lot of gritty years. But in the long run, what you hope is that you get to somewhat detach your individual reputation from the company's reputation. And as the company grows, it creates its own being, so to speak, in itself.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that it's important, like, for those listening that I don't want it to ever be interpreted like, oh, she's bothered by DMs or she's bothered by messages, because I meant it when I said, like, I pride myself on those relationships that I have with
begged for this
with
moment.
my clients. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes, so much. So I'm not ungrateful for that.
Yeah. It's this, I hate to use the word balance. Balance is just such a, I don't know. It's such a big word.
I don't really love the word balance. It's more of like a reprioritization.
Yeah, it's just what I was going to say. It's a tough balance to strike.
Yeah,
it's not a perfect science.
Well, what I was saying, I don't want someone that's maybe listening to this and they're like, well, I'm not going to message her because it's like, it's a drain, it's a burden, because that's absolutely not the case whatsoever. Because I wanted this so bad, and I knowingly signed up for this. I mean, are there things that come with social media that I was not prepared for? Absolutely. But the messages that I'm getting back to, I want to get back to, and I want to have that that communication. Like I could sign that off and give someone else, like delegate DMs, and I know a lot of people that do that, but like I mean it when I say I want to have that interaction. I want to have that impact, because I think that it is just one of our core values for Lexi Wellness is intentional relationships, and I think that I pride myself on that, and I continually remind myself, like, this may be the only impression that person has of me, which I think is why it comes back to like that sense of urgency, where I'm like, well, if this is the first time they've ever talked to me, or if they had a question, I get back to them super fast, then they'll think more of me, or they'll think highly of me. And being the kind of person that I am, the Enneagram 3 achiever, it's like very much tied to reputation and your achievements, and I have somehow kind of wrapped myself up in that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think being self-aware of who you are and like how you're wired has any effect on that? Like you just referenced being an Enneagram 3.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Because you kind of wear it as a badge of honor at some point, you know? Like, I think that whenever you recognize, like whenever you have that epiphany, like I am this, then, you know, you kind of, you tote that around and wear it on your sleeve, because you understand that like this is natural for me and this is who I am, and I'm going to own this.
I don't know that it's a badge of honor, because I am an Enneagram 3 for both the good and the bad. I kind of have a, like, I don't think there's any doubting of what I am, especially after reading more into it. Like, it's very obvious what I am. So I think that just having that self-awareness and understanding how I am wired, it makes me just more cognizant of why I do the things that I do and how I approach things. And it also kind of allows me to give people grace when they don't do the things that I would do, or they don't do the things in the same manner that I would do, because I'm like, oh, well, it's because we're not wired the same.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think the same, so why would we approach the situation the same?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important. I think it's we were talking about this weekend. Dawson and I were just and because someone else had brought up the Enneagram, and I was saying, you know, he's an 8, and I said I asked that and had him take that test shortly after we started working together. All of my employees, I know what their Enneagrams are also, just because when you work closely with people and you expect them to perform and react and execute at the same way that you would, that's unrealistic, and that sets your team up for failure. But if you understand that everyone has the same mission, but they're going to go about it at very different ways, mm-hmm. That's really important.
Yeah. That's really big there. I think that's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? I think that's just a very wise way to approach business in general, is to be able to assess your employees and the people you're working with, and see what their strengths and weaknesses are, and play to them, and what you should expect out of them whenever you put them in certain roles. Like if you have expectations for somebody that you can just plug into a position that doesn't fit their mold whatsoever, you know, a lot of times you won't figure that out until it's like too late. But if you know ahead of time, like how they operate, how they think, are they more of a creative, or are they more of an analytical? And you can learn a lot about those things just based on personality traits, and Enneagrams are honestly, excuse me, probably a great stepping stone. Now, not every one is going to be just like I am. That's not necessarily, you know, the case, but you can certainly get a lot of good information out of that, and not thrust somebody into a position that they're not fit for.
Yeah, I'm such a strong believer in the Enneagram. I think it's fascinating, and the more you read into it, the more just seen you feel after you've taken the test. But I learned something new about the Enneagram this week when we were having that conversation. So the person we were talking to, Brittany, she is like very well versed. She has certifications on the Enneagram. So she knows a lot about it. And she had told us.
Really? I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. So she had told us that within each of the 9 types, so the Enneagram types, there are 9, 1 through 9. Brett is a 1 and I'm a 3. There is a kind of a spectrum. So within you being a 1, there's a spectrum, and that itself I think has 1 to 9 or 1 to 10. And she said you typically, like, I don't know if it resets or if you're kind of fixed, but it's basically like healthy to unhealthy. So, and you kind of vary within a day of like 3 levels, which was kind of interesting. That's the first I had heard about it. We didn't talk too extensively into it, but now I'm even more curious. Like, there are levels within your own Enneagram type, which is cool.
That is interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Like, I think that there's definitely like strong, a strong 3, for instance. Like, you are a strong 3. And then, you'll have your subcategories, if you will. Like if I'm a sub 3,
Well,
if I
and
was a strong 1, sub 3 or something of that nature.
Yeah. We were talking about it because she had brought that up when I had told her that Dawson was an 8. So 8 is a challenger. And that's always like surprising to me when I think about him, just because in my head, when I think of a challenger, I think of like an asshole. I think of someone that's very confrontational and super assertive, like
Aggressive,
in an aggressive way. But if you think about like the challenger, he is very like clear cut about expectations. He is very forthright with communication, and
transparency is a very like key part.
Yeah. So when I was explaining that,
type.
she was like, she was going into the spectrum thing, and she was like, that seems like a very healthy 8, where the stereotypical challenger in your head, like the asshole that just like starts fights with people or, just wants to see the world burn.
Right.
That's
just
an
the
unhealthy
antagonist.
8. Yes.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But that was really interesting. I had never heard that before.
Yeah, that is interesting. But all that being said, I think that that's just a great tool, to have in your tool belt.
Yeah, I agree.
To be able to assess people in a way, and they can also learn a lot about themselves. It creates a whole new level of introspection whenever you can have like a definition that you can look at and see like, oh wow, I feel found out whenever you take the test, and then it says, this is what you are, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
If you've never taken it, I highly recommend you take it. I recommend that your spouse or your significant other or whoever you spend your most time with, I recommend having them take it as well. It is so, it probably takes maybe 30 minutes, but it is so worthwhile, and you feel seen by it.
Truth be told, have I ever actually taken the exam itself? Like, I just know that I've...
Yeah, you have.
Have I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's just been a long time ago. Okay. I couldn't remember. I didn't think it took that long.
I may be over 20 minutes. Who knows? Not very long, but
either way,
it's super interesting.
Yeah. But kind of circling back to the initial conversation, like with technology in general. So there's all sorts of studies out there that, that show the correlation of stress, cortisol levels, whatever you want to define it as, related to us being in front of a screen and constantly having something next to us that creates this level of anxiety where it's, you always feel inclined to grab it, inclined to touch it, inclined to see what's happening, what you're missing out on, what's happening in the news, what's happening on social media. There's always something.
Which it's designed to do. The algorithm is smarter than us. So it is designed to keep you wanting to come back to make you want to keep coming back. It is designed to make you feel like you're missing out. It is so intelligent that you have to be incredibly mindful of putting those boundaries on it. Or otherwise, it's the same deal as like junk food. Junk food is designed to activate things in your brain that makes you want to continue eating it, that doesn't satiate you. You don't get satisfied, so you just keep wanting more and more. And if you have an endless supply, you're going to continue eating it. Mm-hmm. So if you have an endless supply of mindless content, you're going to keep consuming it. Mm-hmm. It is digital junk food.
Yeah. Your mind has this weak spot that gets created whenever something gets thrust in your face and you can't help but look. Or, it just derails what you initially intended to do whenever you grabbed the device. If you grab your phone and let's say, for instance, you get on Instagram because you want to search and see what so-and-so's spouse's name is. Sometimes I use Instagram as a tool, like, I forget names horribly. That's something that I have to work on all the time. So if I get on there and let's just say I'm getting ready to look up a name, I see something on the timeline that grabs my eye, and I'll forget what I actually got on the stupid app to do.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Because I immediately get captivated by something, and that's exactly what the app is intended to do, is to captivate you and keep you on there as long as possible. And again, like you said, the algorithm is extremely intelligent. It learns you and it learns what you like. And even if you're not scrolling, it's tracking what you are looking at. Like even if you're not clicking, it's still keeping track of how long it took you to scroll, because it's going to see if you took time to look at something. So it knows exactly what it needs to do, what it needs to feed you to keep you on there longer. But all that being said, the only way to outsmart it is to simply not use it and to take time away from it, because your mind's, it craves this it has this insatiable itch to just be satisfied, if you will, by something new. It's like crack to our mind. So you just have to simply set it aside and set some very intentional time. That's part of one of my my critical tasks, because it is something that I struggle with late at night, like just not even grabbing my phone, not touching it. I mean, I put it in a totally different room. I don't touch it for at least an hour. That's part of one of my critical tasks. So that has to happen every single day. And it's nice. It's, it helps me kind of decompress. And right now, I'm well over an hour now, accounting for whenever we started this podcast. But it feels good to not have it, by my hip.
The last thing that I really wanted to touch on, and something that you had mentioned there, it's like the algorithm knows you, it knows what you like, and it will continue feeding you things that you are captivated by. And while you're consuming this content that is just like enthralling, it's putting a stark contrast between your reality and what you're consuming on your phone, which is making your reality, your day-to-day life, seem so boring and mundane and does not meet the expectations of this fictitious life that you're consuming constantly on your phone. So then it's no surprise that people are unhappy with their professions. They're unhappy in their relationships. They're unhappy with their physical state. They're unhappy here and here and here and here. It's because they're constantly inundated with new content that raises the stakes, that is airbrushed, that is perfectly posed, that is taken 100 different tries before that one's posted. And as someone that creates content, like, it takes a lot of there are a lot of behind the scenes of that perfect, one-liner that you may see that you're putting yourself up against. And it's creating such a gap between your real life and what you're looking at online. And I think that if you have a platform, it's important that you keep it as real as possible. And I think that if you're someone that finds yourself being sucked into that algorithm, you have to remind yourself that of all that goes into that curation, that there is so much that, one, the algorithm is feeding you, but two, those creators are putting a lot of effort into making this life look this way. Mm-hmm. That I promise those relationships that you're drooling over, those vacations that you're dreaming about and you're just stacking yours against, they have problems too. It's real life. the people that you follow and you think that they are bulletproof are real humans as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this unsettling reality, like whenever you get around somebody that is high profile, or somebody that you had never actually known on a personal level, because you've only seen them like on Instagram or whatever, and then you get around them, you're like, huh, so this is just their life, you know? They're just like a normal person like me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just brings it full circle. And then it's almost like the magic is gone, and it's like you think of them as a normal human. But then, you know, the reset button gets hit whenever, you know, you get taken out of that element, and then you see somebody else that you've never met before, and you start thinking of them as this larger than life figure that doesn't live the same life that any other human lives, you know. But at the end of the day, they are, you know, they are just a human living their normal life. And whenever we get on social media and we constantly just assume that our life is less significant than others, then it just downplays your day to day.
Oh, it discredits your entire life.
And you just stop having any gratitude for what you have in the present moment. And life can start to seem somewhat meaningless. I think that, you know, you can get in a funk and just lose sight of really what all you do have to be grateful for. And I 100% see how technology has played a huge role in this depression issue that we have in our world today. It's not just unique to America. It's unique to every country, you know, that has a smartphone, you know, that has access to internet. We've all just become so captivated by these devices that we carry around like the most important thing in the world. And it's become a sickness.
Yeah, it's like I had said at the beginning, it just makes me feel gross. But that's the most upsetting thing of all, is just that the gratitude piece. It makes you less grateful for your everyday life when you are so privileged and you're so beyond blessed just to, you know, have a roof over your head and have warm clothes and have food and not have to worry about where your next meal is coming from. And because we are exposed to every single person on the planet, that we have a lot more of such a larger sample size to compare ourselves to. Mm-hmm. And that's not good for us.
Yeah. I'll be the first person to admit that I like nice material objects, and I have a lot of goals that are nice material objects. But there was a difference in the era where, in my opinion, it's not like I lived it, but there had to have been a large difference in the era where you didn't have the social media element, where once you got something, then you immediately were thinking about, you know, what the next guy had that you've been following. You're like, okay, well, I have this. I no longer care about this. I mean, your mind immediately jumps to the next thing, and you're no longer really satisfied with what you just achieved. And in my mind, maybe this is not true, but I feel like there was probably a little bit more satisfaction before the time of social media. Like you got to kind of like bask in the moment a little bit longer. You know, I think that it's human nature for sure to just continue to crave more, and always look to the next thing. But I think that it would be nice to remove, you know, the outside world, you know, and just actually be thankful for something that, you know, that you have or that you've earned, and just be grateful for that thing or that place that you're in, or the people that you have around you that you've gotten to this point, and just enjoy it, you know?
Yeah. I have one solution for you. You can disconnect and you can get your ass outside.
Yeah. Getting your ass outside is a great way to disconnect in itself.
That's the ticket.
Yeah.
I have my phone in a loopy case, and I loop it on my ruck. That way I don't have to do it. I don't have to touch it unless I'm taking my get your ass outside picture, because I didn't get my ass outside if I didn't take a picture.
Loopy hack.
Yeah. All right, guys, I think that's all we've got for you. I hope you had a great Wednesday. Have a great Wednesday. If you've got any topics, questions, anything you want us to touch on, please email those to our email at
pod@lexijwellness.com.
But until then, we will talk to you next week.